Before you scroll away, I need you to hear this. I'm not just some old woman rambling into the void. I'm a mother whose daughter-in-law rubbed chili paste into her cracked lips and forced her to swallow toilet water for asking to use the bathroom. I'm 78 years old. I survived. But don't mistake that for forgiveness. My name is Ruth. I once raised a son who said I was his hero. I taught him how to tie his shoes and held him through fevers. I sold my jewelry to put him through school. And now he lets his wife treat me worse than the rats in the alley. Maybe worse than he ever would have dared to treat a dog. Her name is Jessica. She's younger than my youngest memory and colder than winter steel. She smiles when company is over, asks me to go rest while she plays perfect wife. But the moment that front door clicks shut, her voice turns sharp. Her eyes change. And her cruelty begins. It started with small things. Cold meals. Doors shut in my face. Slapping my hand when I reached for the remote. "You're old," she said. "Stop touching things." Then, last month, I dropped a fork. That's all. My fingers are stiff from arthritis, and the metal slipped from my hand. The sound wasn't even loud. She didn't yell. She just stared at me like I was dirt on her carpet. Then she said, "You eat like an animal. Maybe it's time you learn to live like one." She dragged me to the garage. No lights. No blanket. She took away my hearing aid and left me sitting on the cold concrete for 3 full days. No food. Just a bowl of water, filthy, brown, from the mop bucket. When I begged for food, she stuffed a rag in my mouth and whispered, "You want sympathy? Die quietly." I would have. I almost did. But I've kept quiet long enough. And while she's busy laughing behind closed doors and calling me expired, I've been making notes. I know where she hides her sleeping pills. I know the alarm code. I know what she did last year when my pension money went missing and I kept the bank statements. She thinks I'm weak. She thinks I've given up. She has no idea I've been planning her downfall, one whisper, one step, one scar at a time. She turned my life into a cage. Now I'm going to burn the whole thing down with her inside it. It was always the same routine with Jessica. She'd look at me like I was the stain ruining her perfect home, then do something to remind me I didn't belong in it. The rules changed by the day. Sometimes I was too loud when I walked. Other times, it was my stink that offended her, though she was the one who denied me access to the shower. "You'll waste water," she said, but I knew the truth. She just didn't want me touching anything she thought was hers. The night after she locked me in the garage, my knees were so stiff I couldn't stand properly. My hands were cracked from cold, my lips bleeding. When she let me out, she held her phone up and snapped a picture. "Smile," she said, smirking. "You look like a war victim." I didn't speak. I knew better. She brought me inside, dumped a plate of dry oats on the floor like I was some mangy pet, then walked away humming a tune. The humiliation burned worse than the hunger. My son, Daniel, wasn't home. He was away for work. He always was when things got this bad. Or maybe he just said that so he wouldn't have to face what he allowed. I ate from that plate on the floor. I had no choice. She watched from the hallway, arms crossed, phone in hand, recording. But I did something she didn't see. As I chewed, I moved my eyes just enough to study the table beside her. She left her purse there, wide open, her keys poked out from the corner. I didn't need them yet, but it told me something. She was getting careless. That night, I waited until she fell asleep. She always took sleep medication around 9:30, and I crept into the kitchen with my aching joints screaming. It took me 10 minutes to bend down and lift the loose corner of the floorboard near the pantry. I discovered it months ago while scrubbing the floor after Jessica threw curry at me for burning dinner. Inside the hollow, I hid a spoon. That's all. A spoon I'd stolen from the trash, its handle bent, its edges dull. But it felt like a sword in my hand. I whispered to myself that night, over and over, she is not the only one who can make plans. The next morning, she accidentally spilled bleach into my tea. I gagged, nearly vomited, and she clucked her tongue like I was an ungrateful child. When I didn't drink it, she dragged me to the laundry room and made me stand barefoot on the cold tile for 6 hours. Every time I leaned against the wall, she kicked my shin and said, "Old trees should fall quietly." I didn't fall. Not that day. Not the next. But I started to bleed inside. Not physically. Something worse. The kind of bleeding that stains your memories, that makes you forget what your laugh used to sound like. That makes you wonder if maybe she's right. Maybe you are just a body wasting oxygen. But then, a flicker. Daniel came home. He kissed Jessica's cheek and asked, "How's Mom?" She smiled and said, "She's been difficult." He frowned, looked at me, saw the bruises under my sleeve. He opened his mouth. She touched his arm. He closed it. Coward. But that night, after they went to bed, I crept back to the loose floorboard and ran my fingers over the spoon. My mind was clear. She hurt me. She starved me. She humiliated me. But I'm still here. She thinks I'm waiting to die. She's wrong. I'm waiting for her to make one final mistake. And when she does, I'll be ready. I used to believe monsters came at night, that they hid under beds or in the shadows of alleys. But monsters don't growl. They don't always hide. Some wear perfume and smile at your son like they were heaven sent. The first time Jessica hit me, Daniel had only been married to her for 4 months. She was polite at first. Too polite. The kind that sticks a knife in you with a thank you. She insisted I move in, said I'd be safer with them, since I was getting older. But the moment my last suitcase hit the floor of the guest room, her tone shifted. That night, she served me soup. Saltless. Thin. Like dirty dishwater. I quietly added a pinch of salt from the shaker near me. That was my first mistake. She said nothing in front of Daniel. But the second he left for work the next morning, she stormed into the room holding that same salt shaker like it was a weapon. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" she hissed. I blinked. "I'm sorry." She slammed it down on the side table beside me. "You think you're gonna turn my husband against me with your sweet old lady act? I've seen women like you." I was just a crack. The slap landed so fast, I didn't even register it until the sting spread across my cheek like wildfire. I touched my face in shock, and she smiled. "You ever embarrass me again at my table, I'll make you swallow glass." I didn't cry. Not then. Not even when she knocked over the lamp accidentally, so it shattered near my feet and made me clean it with bare hands. But I did shake. I trembled that night in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd just walked into. When Daniel came home, he kissed her forehead and asked if dinner was ready. She laughed and said, "Your mom's been such a help today." I stayed silent. My lip was split. I told him I bit it on a cracker. I protected her. The first time, I wouldn't make that mistake again. Because that first slap wasn't just pain. It was a warning. A test. And I failed it. I showed her I wouldn't fight back. She knew then that she had me. That I was alone. Over the months, it grew worse. She'd forget to give me dinner. Slam doors just inches from my fingers. Once, when I left a light on too long, she made me stand in the dark garage for 5 hours and told me it was to balance the electric bill. Daniel saw things. A bruise here. A broken teacup there. He always looked uncomfortable. But he never asked. Men like him don't like ugly truths. They'd rather live in the lie someone beautiful hands them. But I'm not blind. I'm not dead. And I'm not weak. Every day since that slap, I've written things down. Not in a notebook. That's too easy to find. I memorize. I rehearse in my head like prayers. Every cruel word. Every injury. Every slip of the tongue. Because Jessica may think she married a quiet, senile widow. But I was born in a war zone. Raised 3 children through famine. Buried 2 husbands. And I've never lost a fight that mattered. The next time her hand comes near me, it won't be mine that bleeds. It was a Tuesday when I decided to stop surviving and start fighting. Jessica had locked me out of the house that morning. No shoes. No coat. Just standing in the yard like a ghost while the neighbors peeked through their curtains and pretended not to see. She told me I needed air. Then she left me out there for 2 hours until my feet were purple. When she let me in, she handed me a cold rag and said, "Next time you embarrass me by falling asleep on the couch, I'll leave you out overnight." She walked away humming. I stood in the doorway, shivering and humiliated, but something inside me shifted. She thought I was too scared to do anything, too weak, too old. But she forgot something. I used to be a nurse. Long before my bones cracked and my spine curled in like a question mark, I spent 25 years in hospitals, administering meds, calming drunks, recognizing the signs of quiet poisonings. And I knew what chamomile tea looked like when it had just a little something extra in it. That afternoon, while she was napping, I went into the pantry. It took me 15 minutes of inching on aching knees to reach the back shelf. There, behind expired soup cans and dusty jars, I found what I needed: senna leaves. A laxative. Strong when brewed long enough. Safe. Legal. Undetectable in tea, unless you know what to look for. Jessica liked her tea at 4 p.m. sharp. She always demanded I bring it to her on a tray with lemon and no sugar. If the temperature was wrong, she'd tip it on my lap. So I brewed it just as she liked it, only stronger. Then I crushed a few senna leaves and let them steep for exactly 8 minutes. When I handed her the cup, my hands trembled. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Still shaking? You're pathetic." I said nothing, just stood there, waiting, pretending to be invisible. She sipped, made a face, then shrugged. "Tastes bitter." I nodded, eyes down. "Must be the lemon." She drank it all. The effects didn't hit for an hour. But when they did, they came in waves. She ran to the bathroom so many times she nearly kicked the door off the hinges. She cursed. She moaned. She even threw her phone at the wall. I sat in the living room, pretending to knit, listening to her panic. I must have caught something, she muttered that night, curled up on the couch. "God, I feel like I'm dying." I offered her a blanket. She smacked it out of my hands. But I smiled when she wasn't looking. It was small, barely revenge. But it was mine. I didn't want to kill her. Not yet. That would be too easy. Too quick. I wanted her to feel small. To feel unsafe. To start wondering if she was losing control. Because once doubt sets in, fear follows. And when she starts to fear me, she'll finally understand what it feels like to be me. Jessica always believed control was silent. Not shouted, not slammed. Just slipped into your life like poison, slow and quiet, until you forgot what breathing used to feel like. But after the tea, something shifted in her. She didn't smile as quickly. Didn't bark commands with the same certainty. She was watching me now more closely. Like I was the fly that somehow kept escaping her web. I kept playing the role. The obedient mother-in-law. Limping, soft-spoken, eyes lowered. But underneath, I was alive in a way I hadn't been in years. 3 nights after the tea incident, she stormed into the kitchen while I was peeling potatoes and demanded to know if I had touched her vitamins. I hadn't. Not yet. But just hearing the panic in her voice was enough to feed me for a week. She slapped the cutting board off the counter. The knife clattered to the floor. "You think you're clever?" she snarled, stepping closer. "You think I don't know when someone's messing with my things?" I bent to pick up the blade. Slowly, deliberately. She flinched. It was so fast, barely a twitch, but I saw it. She was afraid. And that was the first real bruise I ever left on her. Fear. The kind that spreads under the skin without showing. I didn't say a word. I picked up the knife, set it back on the counter, and stared at her hands, perfect little hands that had hurt me more than fists ever could. She backed away. And that night, for the first time, she didn't finish her dinner. She barely spoke to Daniel. Just said she had a headache and went to bed early. I waited until the house was quiet. Then I crept into her bathroom. I didn't take anything. I didn't break anything. But I moved one thing, her toothbrush. Just half an inch to the left. When you live under someone's control long enough, you learn their patterns like prayer. Jessica's life was a script, perfect, practiced, obsessive. She always placed her toothbrush vertically against the cup. I laid it flat. The next morning, she came down pale and shaking. Did you go in my bathroom? I blinked innocent. No, dear. Should I have? She didn't answer, but her eyes narrowed. Not angry, paranoid. She was unraveling, a single thread at a time. Later that afternoon, she scrubbed the kitchen floor for an hour. Hard, like she was trying to wipe something away that only she could see. Maybe guilt, maybe fear. But I stood in the doorway and watched her ruin her own peace with her own imagination. I didn't have to lift a finger. She was finally starting to feel the weight of her own games. And the best part? I was just getting started. I knew it the moment I heard the click. It was early, before sunrise. The house was still. Jessica's heels hadn't yet tapped their threats down the hallway. But something in the air felt colder. I shuffled to the kitchen, fingers trailing the wall for balance, and stopped dead in front of the refrigerator. There, glinting against the handle, was a thick silver padlock. I stared at it for nearly a minute, silent, heartbeat steady. Then I saw the note taped to the front. Just one line, scrawled in red ink. Since you like to play games, let's see how long you last. No food. No access. No apology. I hadn't tampered with anything since the tea. I hadn't touched her toothbrush again. But the fear was growing inside Jessica like a fungus. She didn't know what I was doing or how, but she knew something was happening. And now she was lashing out. Daniel left early for a work trip that morning. He kissed her cheek and told her to take it easy with me. I stood at the top of the stairs, silent, watching his suitcase wheel out the door like it was dragging my last hope with it. Jessica waited until the door slammed. Then she turned to me with that glassy, sweet smile. "Breakfast is canceled," she said. "You can have toast." If there's any left. There wasn't. She left me alone for hours, locked inside the house, with only water and stale crackers from the pantry. By noon, my head throbbed. By dusk, my legs shook with every step. I thought she might be done for the night. I was wrong. She came into the living room after dinner and tossed a plastic bucket at my feet. "Bathroom privileges," she said. "Only when I say." My mouth went dry. "Jessica, please," she grabbed my chin, hard, forcing me to look into her eyes. "You think you're clever, don't you? Moving my things. Brewing weird tea. Watching me." I said nothing. "You want to fight me?" she whispered. "You think you can win?" I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I let her see my eyes, calm, hollow, ancient. And I said the first bold words I'd spoken in weeks. "No. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to outlast you." She slapped me. The sting cracked across my cheek like lightning. But inside, I felt steady, strong, the way old trees creak but never fall. She stormed away, slamming her bedroom door so hard a photo frame fell from the hall wall. I stayed on the floor for a while near the bucket, feeling the burn on my face cool into a bruise. But in my mind, I was counting how many times she hit me, counting how many cracks were forming in her voice, counting the days until Daniel came back, because when he did, he would find a different mother. Not broken, not afraid, just ready. I still remember the day Daniel gave me the phone. It was an old flip model, basic, no apps, just numbers and a weak little camera. He handed it to me with a smile the year Jessica married him. "So you can call me anytime, Ma," he said. Jessica told him I'd lost it during the move, that it must have gotten thrown away with some of the boxes. But she didn't know I'd tucked it into the lining of my coat. I charged it once every few weeks, just long enough to make sure it still worked. And tonight, I finally turned it back on. Jessica was asleep, or pretending to be. After the bucket incident, she hadn't spoken to me for 2 days. But her silence was louder than any slap. She wanted me to beg. She wanted to break me. Instead, I waited until her light went out and crept to the basement, step by aching step. I'd wedged the charger behind a broken fan months ago. My fingers trembled as I plugged it in, not from fear, but from the sheer relief of having something again. Something she didn't control. The battery blinked green. I flipped it open, and, for the first time, I took a photo of my face. The bruise on my cheek had blossomed into something dark and ugly proof. I didn't flinch. I took another photo of the padlock on the fridge, one of the bucket in the corner of my room, one of my wrist, where she'd grabbed me hard enough to leave finger-shaped marks the day before. I saved them all. Evidence. Truth. She'd stolen everything else, but not this. Not my story. I knew Daniel wouldn't believe me at first. He'd think I was exaggerating, misremembering. He wanted to keep loving her more than he wanted to face what she was. But no one can deny a photograph. And if I was going to survive this, I needed more. So I started keeping a list. Not on paper, too risky. I memorized it, like scripture. Day 1, slapped. Padlock installed. No food. Day 2, only allowed crackers. No bathroom access. Day 3, pushed into doorframe. Bruise on left shoulder. Day 4, threatened. Called worthless parasite. Day 5, made to scrub kitchen floor with toothbrush. Each night, after she went to bed, I whispered the list to myself like a bedtime prayer. Repeating it, burning it into memory. The more she tried to erase me, the more I carved myself into stone. I am Ruth, daughter of Marta, mother of Daniel, survivor of 2 wars. And this house is not my grave. It's just the battlefield. And now, I've got a weapon. The hardest part wasn't pressing record. It was waiting for the right moment. I didn't want yelling. That wouldn't convince Daniel. Jessica could fake sweetness in a heartbeat, and he'd fall for it like he always had. No, I needed quiet violence. The kind she did when no one was watching. The kind she believed would never leave a trace. So I waited. 2 days passed. I kept my head down. I cleaned the windows she already cleaned. I apologized for imaginary mistakes. I made her believe I was broken again. That's when she got comfortable. It happened in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone, when I accidentally knocked over the glass of water I'd just poured for her. It spilled across the table and splashed her lap. I froze. I didn't even try to mop it up. She stood so slowly, I could hear her bones crack. Then she smiled, and that's when I knew. This was the moment. I told you about clumsiness, she said, sweet as syrup. Didn't I, Ruth? Yes, I whispered. Then why are you making such a mess? She stepped forward and grabbed me by the hair. I didn't scream. I didn't pull back. I let her drag my face inches from hers as she hissed, "You think I won't hit you again? Is that it? You think that bruise healed because I went soft?" She raised her hand. Click. I'd already propped the phone behind the cereal box on the counter. The red light was flashing. She didn't notice. The slap stung worse than the last one. But this time, I smiled. "Are you grinning?" she snapped. "You think this is funny?" I shook my head. "No. I'm just thinking about lemon tea." She froze. Her hand dropped. "You did something to me," she muttered. I knew it. That week I couldn't stop. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said softly. "I just hope the floor dries before Daniel comes home." Her face changed. For just a second. Something passed through it, fear? Doubt? She let go of my hair. Then she stormed out of the room. I waited 5 minutes. Then 10. When I was sure she wasn't coming back, I retrieved the phone. The whole thing recorded. Not blurry. Not muffled. Clear. Her face. Her voice. Her hand. I watched it once. Then saved it. My heart pounded like a war drum. Not from fear, but from the realization that I now had undeniable proof. If she killed me tomorrow, I'd still win. Because someone would see it. Someone would know. But I wasn't planning on dying. Not now. Not until she felt everything she gave me. And believe me, that day was coming. Paranoia smells like bleach. Jessica started scrubbing everything. The countertops, the door handles, even the television remote. Every day she'd wipe it all down like she was trying to erase fingerprints I hadn't left. She didn't know about the video. But she knew something had changed. I moved slower. I flinched less. I held her stare a little longer when she hurled insults. I didn't talk back, but I didn't shrink either. And she hated it. She felt the shift before she could name it. So she circled. She started going through my things again. Ripping open drawers, patting down my mattress, sniffing my clothes like madness itself had seeped into her brain. She even checked the garbage once. For what? I don't know. Evidence? Pills? A plan? She was terrified of a plan. I smiled more often now. Just a little. When she watched me sweep, I'd hum. When I washed her dishes, I made sure to set the cups down gently, like a servant at peace. It drove her insane. The illusion was unraveling, and she was too blind to know how close she stood to the edge. Then she made a mistake. She came into my room after midnight. I'd heard her footsteps on the stairs, quiet, like a thief. I stayed still, eyes closed, breathing slow. She stood by my bed for nearly a minute. Then I felt it, her hand under my pillow. She found the phone, but not the right one. It was an old toy phone I'd found in a junk drawer, plastic, no battery, no function. I'd placed it there 2 nights before, just in case. And when she took it, clutching it like a trophy, I almost laughed. She thought she'd won. The real phone, the one with the video, the photos, the power, was hidden beneath a loose board in the hallway, wrapped in cloth, buried under a layer of dust I hadn't disturbed since the year Daniel turned 15. Let her gloat. Let her think she'd stopped me. In the morning, she confronted me over breakfast. Tossed the fake phone on the table between us. "You're not smart, Ruth," she said. "You're just old and bored." I looked up from my porridge and gave her the smallest, most patient smile. "You're right," I whispered. "I'm nothing." She watched me all day. Didn't leave the house. Hovered behind doors. Listened at walls. She was unraveling faster now. The fire was under her skin, and she didn't know where the smoke was coming from. Good, because the match was already lit. And it was her turn to burn. I waited for the storm. Jessica had been pacing for days, gnawing her fingernails down to nothing, whispering to herself when she thought I couldn't hear. Whatever piece she clung to had rotted from the inside, and I was the worm she couldn't find. Daniel was coming home in 3 days. 3. It was now or never. That morning, after she left for her nail appointment, one of the few luxuries she wouldn't skip even if the house was on fire, I moved fast. I lifted the hallway floorboard with a butter knife, pulled the real phone from its cloth wrap, and opened the gallery. The video stared back at me like an open wound. Jessica's voice. Her slap. My stillness. Undeniable. I found Daniel's number. My hands trembled as I typed the message. "Daniel, I'm your mother, and I need help. Watch this. Please." I attached the file and hovered my thumb over send. I breathed in, held it, and pressed. It went. Delivered. I buried the phone again and wiped everything. The butter knife, the floorboard, my prints. Then I sat in the living room with my knitting, pretending to purl and loop while my heartbeat drowned out the clock. She returned at 11:16 sharp. I could smell the citrus of her perfume before I saw her face. She breezed past me without a word. But an hour later, I knew something was wrong. She came back down the stairs, her eyes narrowed. Her fingers twitching. Her lips pale. "I forgot my ring," she muttered, voice tight. Upstairs. That's when I knew. She'd seen the message. She had Daniel's iPad. They were synced. Of course they were. A photo here, A message there. It all showed up. And he hadn't replied yet. Hadn't seen it. But she had. She knew everything now. She walked past me again, this time slower. Her eyes locked to mine. "You think you're clever," she said, low and dangerous. "Sending little movies behind my back?" I didn't answer. She leaned closer. "You want war, old woman? You just declared it." Then she slapped the side of my head, not a hard hit, but sharp, with the ring she forgot. It sliced my ear open. Warm blood trickled down my neck. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I looked her dead in the eyes. "I warned you," I whispered. That was the moment the smile left her face completely. Because deep down, she finally believed me. When I heard the front door unlock, my hands went cold. It had been 2 days since I sent the video. 2 days of silence. Jessica hadn't spoken to me once, not a slap, not a word. Just that icy look, that ticking time bomb in her eyes. And now, Daniel was home. He stepped inside with a small suitcase and his usual distracted smile. The one he always wore when he didn't want to talk too much, when work still buzzed in his head. "Hey, Ma," he said casually. "Jessica said you've been a little unwell." A little unwell. Jessica appeared from the kitchen like a ghost wrapped in satin. She wore soft pink lipstick and pearls, like she was starring in a commercial for kindness. Her arm slipped into Daniel's, and she kissed his cheek. "She's been confused lately," she said with a gentle laugh. "Getting forgetful. You know how it is." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, that's what I figured." He didn't look at me. Not yet. Not until after dinner. We sat at the table in brittle silence. Jessica served steak and potatoes like we were in a Norman Rockwell painting. She laughed, told stories about Daniel's coworkers, even made a joke about me misplacing the salt. I didn't laugh. Neither did Daniel. After we cleared the plates, he said he needed to check emails and went upstairs. Jessica turned to me, smiling. "He hasn't seen it," she said. "And now he won't." I deleted it. "You really thought you'd win." I stared down at the table. My fingers gently traced the grain in the wood. I didn't answer, because I had sent 2 messages. The first to Daniel's number. The second to his work email. Time-stamped. Labeled, "From Ruth. Please don't ignore this." I just had to wait. At 10:14 p.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. He paused outside my door, then knocked. Softly. "Ma," he said. My chest tightened. I opened the door. He looked pale, confused, like he'd seen something he couldn't understand. "I got a strange email," he said. I nodded. "You sent it?" "Yes." He looked past me for a second, at the small cot, the cracked mirror, the old photos I'd taped to the wall to feel human. Then he looked back at me. "Is it real?" My throat closed. "I wish it weren't," I whispered. He swallowed hard. His hands shook slightly. I don't know what to do." I didn't expect that. That helpless honesty. That boyish lostness in his voice. For a second, I saw the child I raised, not the man I feared he'd become. "You don't have to know what to do," I said. "You just have to see." And I handed him the phone. He sat on the edge of the bed, knees shaking, and watched the video. All of it. He didn't speak for nearly a minute after it ended. Then his voice broke like wet paper. She did this to you?" I didn't cry. I only said, "She's still doing it." He stood up slowly, turned toward the door. His fists clenched. I reached for his hand. "Wait." "Why?" "Because if you go now, she'll lie. And you'll listen. Like always." He closed his eyes. "I'm not that blind, Ma." We stood in silence. The war wasn't over. But the front line had shifted. For the first time. I wasn't standing on it alone. "You can't confront her," I said. Daniel stood in my room like a storm bottled into skin. His jaw was tight, fists trembling. "Why not?" I saw it. I heard her. "I should go downstairs right now." "No," I said, firmer this time. "You've spent years believing her over me." If you yell now, she'll twist it. She'll weep. She'll say I faked it. And you'll hesitate. Even for a second. That's all she needs. He looked away. Shame burned across his face. I'm sorry, Ma. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Silence. Then he nodded. So, what do we do? I smiled. A slow, patient smile I hadn't worn in years. We feed her fear. Make her doubt herself. We don't strike fast. We make her bleed drop by drop. That night, we set the first trap. Daniel said nothing at dinner. Jessica tried to act normal, pouring his wine, telling stories. But he didn't laugh. Didn't even look at her. When she touched his hand, he flinched. Her eyes narrowed, barely. A flicker. She noticed. The next morning, Daniel accidentally left his phone on the table, with the video paused at just the right frame. Jessica found it. I watched her from the hallway. Her hand froze over the screen. Her eyes went wide. She didn't scream. She didn't shout. She just stood there, frozen, like the devil had walked through her front door in slippers. She put the phone down and walked away. Hours later, she tried to be sweet again. She brought me soup. I've been thinking, she said gently. Maybe we could start fresh. I looked her dead in the eyes. No, Jessica. I don't think we can. Her smile faltered for half a breath. But she caught herself. Daniel came home early the next few days. He kept his phone locked. Didn't touch her. Didn't speak unless he had to. Slowly, she began to spiral. One morning, she shattered a mug when she thought I hadn't rinsed it right. The next night, she tore through the trash looking for anything, to pin on me. Daniel watched her from the hallway, unseen, then walked away without saying a word. She screamed into a pillow that night. The control she worshipped was slipping through her fingers, and she had no idea how. Good, because we weren't done. I had more footage. More bruises she forgot I photographed. And Daniel? He was finally watching the woman he married become a monster in real time. This wasn't revenge yet. This was only the reckoning. Sunday brunch. Jessica insisted on it. Said she wanted to make things feel normal again. Daniel didn't object, but I saw it in his eyes. He knew what I knew. She was performing. And she needed an audience. We drove to a quaint little cafe downtown. The kind with fake ivy walls and overpriced eggs. Daniel's coworkers were already seated at a corner table, 3 of them. 2 men, 1 woman. All young, polished, full of admiration for the beautiful Mrs. Delacroix. Jessica lit up the moment she stepped out of the car. Pink lipstick, perfect bun, pearls, and that saccharine voice she used when she wanted to be adored. Oh, stop, you'll make me blush, she told Daniel's coworker after a compliment. She laughed like a woman without a single worry in the world. But Daniel didn't sit beside her. He sat beside me. That was the first crack. I saw it in her smile, just the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth, a flash of something dark behind her eyes. She recovered quickly, poured Daniel's coffee like nothing had changed. Until she noticed he didn't drink it. We all chatted, about work, about holidays, about nonsense. But Jessica kept circling back to me. She's been forgetful lately, she said with a practiced chuckle. Just the other day, she tried to wash her hair with cooking oil. I didn't respond. Daniel didn't laugh. His coworker smiled awkwardly. That's kinda cute, actually. Jessica blinked, then laughed too loud. It cracked a little. The second crack. She poured herself more coffee, but her hand shook slightly. The spoon clanged against the cup. Daniel leaned toward me. Would you like a refill, Ma? That simple question, innocent on the surface, was a knife in Jessica's side. For years, he'd ignored me in public, never helped, never asked, never even acknowledged. Now she wasn't the center anymore. Her hand slipped. The coffee cup tipped. A full splash right onto my lap. Oh, she gasped, eyes wide in false horror. Oh my goodness, I'm so clumsy. But it wasn't clumsiness. It was calculated. Warm liquid soaked my skirt. The sting on my thighs wasn't severe, but intentional, just enough to hurt without showing marks. Everyone jumped up. Napkins flew. Apologies murmured. And Daniel? He didn't rush to help her. He helped me. She watched, frozen. Her hands still trembling, her breath shallow. I'm taking her home, Daniel said coldly. You stay. Jessica's mouth opened. But I said stay. We walked out. I didn't limp. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. Until we reached the car. Then I turned to him. You saw it, didn't you? He nodded slowly. She did it on purpose. Yes. I almost missed it. You won't next time. We sat in silence as he drove me home. Behind us, Jessica sat in a cafe surrounded by strangers, her smile cracking, her power slipping. And for the first time in years, I felt her fear more than my own. Daniel left me in the living room that evening, saying he needed to talk to her. Alone. I didn't argue. Let her try. Let her squirm. From the vent near the stairs, I could hear their voices, muffled at first, then rising like the heat under a closed pot. Why are you treating me like a stranger? Jessica hissed. Because of some doctored video? She didn't doctor anything, Daniel said. I saw your hand. I heard your voice. She's turning you against me. She's your husband's mother, he said coldly. And you treat her like filth. Silence. Then a change in tone. Softer. Slithering. Fine, Jessica whispered. You want the truth? She hasn't always been innocent, Daniel. You were just too young to remember. A pause. What are you talking about? I gripped the edge of the couch. My pulse thudded in my ears. Jessica's voice dropped lower. She used to lock you in the closet when you were bad. Lie. She slapped you so hard once your nose bled for hours. Lie. She told me herself I had to discipline him. He wouldn't listen. Lie. Twisted from an old joke I made once, years ago. I could imagine her now, tears welling in her eyes, voice shaking with just enough drama to make it believable. She didn't just neglect you, Daniel, she whispered. She hurt you. I protected you. I was the only one who ever really saw what she was. Silence followed, long, heavy. Then Daniel spoke. And I didn't know if I was breathing until I heard him say it. If that were true, why did you hide everything from me for so long? Jessica flinched. I could hear it in her silence. I've lived here for 3 years, Jessica. I've seen the bruises, the sudden falls, the silence. I saw the video, but the truth was in front of me long before that. You don't believe me? Her voice cracked, sputtering now. No, he said. I don't. Not anymore. Then the loudest silence yet. A drawer opened, roughly. Something metal clattered. A wine glass smashed. Jessica shrieked, You're choosing her over me? I'm choosing what's right. I backed away from the vent. My heart thudded against my ribs. She was unraveling. And now? Daniel wasn't pulling her back together. He was letting her fall. It happened the next morning. The doorbell rang just after 8 a.m. I was still in my robe, my hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood on the porch. 1 male, 1 female. Polite but firm. Mrs. Ruth Lauren, the woman asked. Yes, I said, already knowing. We received a report about potential elder instability in this home. May we speak with you? Behind them, I saw Jessica standing on the sidewalk in a thin robe and slippers, tears painted down her cheeks, clutching a tissue like a prop. She's been having violent outbursts, Jessica said to the officers, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She threatened to hurt herself. And me. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Because this was what she always did when her grip slipped. Make me the danger. Make herself the victim. The male officer stepped forward. Ma'am, may we come inside and speak privately? I opened the door. Of course. Daniel came down the stairs just as they stepped in. What's going on? He asked. Jessica rushed toward him, still crying. I didn't want to do this, she sniffled. But I had to. She's not well. Daniel. She tried to throw a vase at me last night. Said she'd burn the house down with us in it. It was so believable, the way she said it. So natural. I turned to the officers. She's lying. Ma'am, the female officer said gently, do you have any history of mental illness or memory issues? No, I said. But I have something better. I walked past them, slowly, to the living room. I reached behind the bookshelf and pulled out the small USB drive. I held it out. This contains 6 months of recordings. Videos, audio, medical reports, photos of bruises. You'll also find timestamps that match my son's own phone records, and emails to a lawyer who's already preparing an affidavit. I turned to Jessica. Did you forget I was a secretary for 37 years? I documented everything. She paled. The color drained from her face as fast as the blood from her lies. The male officer took the drive and nodded. We'll review this thoroughly. Jessica sputtered. She's manipulating all of you. Don't you see? She's a professional liar, but now the female officer's tone changed. Ma'am, she said to Jessica, we'll need to ask you to step outside. What? For now, until we finish our report. Jessica looked at Daniel, desperate, expecting him to save her. But he didn't. He stood still, silent. His eyes locked on mine, not hers. And I knew. This time, he finally believed me. As they led her outside, she turned her head and screamed back at me. This isn't over. I sipped my cold tea. Calm. Steady. I didn't scream back. Because she was wrong. It was. The police didn't arrest her, not yet. They said they needed to complete the investigation. Standard language, really. But Jessica knew what it meant. Her mask was slipping, and this time, it wasn't going back on. She came back to the house that evening with her lawyer, a sharp-jawed woman with a condescending smile. Jessica didn't speak as they walked past me. She looked straight ahead like I didn't exist. But her hand trembled as she held her purse. Daniel stood near the fireplace, arms folded, jaw tight. Her lawyer spoke first. My client is requesting privacy. She'll be staying in the guest room while the matter is under review. We ask that you avoid any direct contact. I looked at Jessica. Funny, I said. That's all I ever wanted, to be left alone. Jessica finally spoke. Don't act like a martyr. You manipulated him. No, I said, stepping closer. I reminded him. Daniel didn't stop me. Not this time. I stood in front of the woman who had once shoved hot soup in my lap, rubbed bleach on a wound I couldn't reach, and whispered in my ear that no one would believe me if I screamed. And I looked her in the eye. You took years from me, I said softly. Years I will never get back. You stole quiet mornings. You silenced my memories. You humiliated me in my own home, in front of my own son. She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Don't. You don't get to speak over me anymore. The room stilled. Even her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. I may be old, I said, but I am not weak. I remember everything you did. Every bruise. Every fake smile. Every time you made me feel like dirt under your shoe. You broke dishes and said I was clumsy. You hid my medication and said I was forgetful. You dragged me across the floor by my hair and said I slipped. Jessica's face turned white. I should have fought back sooner, I whispered. But now I will never stay quiet again. You made sure the last years of my life were filled with pain, but you'll spend the rest of yours answering for it. Daniel walked up beside me. He didn't say a word, just stood tall, his arm brushing against mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Jessica's lawyer muttered something about leaving. And as they turned to go, I said one last thing. You thought no one would believe an old woman. But now the world's listening. She paused at the door. Just for a second. Then left without another word. The house was quiet for 4 days. Jessica stayed at a hotel under the pretense of cooperating with the investigation. Her lawyer told Daniel it was a temporary separation, that she was giving him space. But we all knew better. She was cornered. And desperate. Daniel spent most of his time working from home, keeping a close eye on me. He was different now, gentler, quieter, but always watching. Like he was afraid he'd miss something again. I slept better a little. I ate without fear of what might be hidden in my food. And I finally pulled out my old sketchbook from under the bed, pages I hadn't touched since Jessica moved in. I drew roses with thorns sharper than truth and women with spines made of steel. But peace, I've learned, is fragile. And monsters don't die easy. On the 5th night, I woke to the sound of glass breaking. Not a loud crash, just a soft, careful crack, like someone testing how much they could get away with. I sat up slowly. Daniel was asleep upstairs. The lights were all off. I reached for the cane beside my bed and stood. My knees ached. My hands trembled. But I moved, through the hallway, toward the kitchen. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, jasmine and iron. Then I saw her, Jessica, standing barefoot in the kitchen, dressed in black, one hand gripping a knife. The back window was broken. She'd come through the yard. She turned when she saw me, calm, as if we were just two women chatting over tea. "You really think this ends with a few recordings?" she said softly. "You humiliated me. Destroyed everything I built." "You built nothing," I whispered. "You only stole." Her eyes flared. "You made him turn on me. He was mine. He chose me. Until you poisoned him." I didn't back away. I stepped closer. "You poisoned yourself, Jessica. Every time you hit me, every lie you told, every bruise you left, you did that. Not me." She raised the knife slightly. Her breath shook. And that's when Daniel's voice cut through the air. "Put it down." He was behind her, phone in hand, recording everything. Her face fell, just for a second. Then she turned on him. "You set me up. I gave you a chance," he said. "To walk away." She screamed. A raw, animal sound. Threw the knife toward the floor and bolted for the broken window. But police sirens were already close. She didn't make it far. They found her crouched in the neighbor's yard, bleeding from a glass cut on her hand. As they dragged her to the cruiser, she looked up at me. "You're nothing," she spat. I stepped onto the porch, my voice steady. "I'm free." Jessica's arrest made headlines. Not front page. Just a quiet column buried between advertisements and weather reports. But that was enough. Her job was gone within days. Her social accounts vanished. Her friends stopped answering her calls. And then came the indictment. Assault. Elder abuse. Attempted harm with a deadly weapon. It was real now. Tangible. The court hearing happened on a gray morning. Daniel offered to drive me, but I said no. I needed to walk through those courthouse doors on my own. When I stepped into the courtroom, I didn't look for her. Not yet. I sat on the wooden bench, straightened my back, folded my hands. The judge entered. The lawyers stood. And finally, when the bailiff called her name, I let myself look. Jessica was thinner. Her hair pulled back in a tight, severe knot. No makeup. No designer heels. Just orange fabric and handcuffs that didn't match her nails. She didn't meet my gaze. The judge read the charges. Her lawyer pleaded not guilty. The prosecution presented video, medical records, audio files, a neighbor's testimony about hearing me scream behind closed doors. And then the judge asked, "Does the victim wish to speak?" I rose slowly, walked to the stand, and faced the courtroom. "I was afraid of her," I began. "And I'm not ashamed to say it. She isolated me, hurt me, lied about me. She made me believe I was losing my mind. She turned my own son against me." I paused, glancing at Daniel. He looked down, ashamed, but listening. "But that's not the first time I was heard in silence," I said. Jessica's head snapped toward me. This was the part she didn't know. When I was 20, I continued, I lived with my mother-in-law. She slapped me if I didn't serve the tea hot enough. She burned my clothes when I refused to wear what she picked. She said women were born to serve quietly or be thrown out. My husband called me dramatic. He said, "She's old. Just let her be." I let her be. For 4 years. Until she died. And no one knew what she'd done. Because I never told a soul. Until now. I looked at the judge. My silence almost killed me once. I won't let it finish the job. I stepped down. Jessica was staring at me, jaw tight, eyes wide. Like she finally realized I had survived women like her before. And I would again. The verdict came on a rainy Thursday. Daniel sat beside me, hands clenched, but I was calm. Steady. I'd already made peace with what would happen even if the judge gave her the minimum the world knew now. She'd never wear the mask again. Jessica sat expressionless as the charges were read. Guilty, the judge declared. On all counts. The sentence. 9 years. No parole before 6. No contact orders. Mandatory psychological evaluations. Restitution for damages. She didn't cry. Didn't flinch. She just looked at me, the way she had when I first moved into this house, like I was something she could mold, wear down, erase. But now, she couldn't even reach me. After the hearing, Daniel and I rode home in silence. But when we got to the porch, a small envelope was waiting on the mat. No name. Just my first name, handwritten in looping script. Inside was a letter. Ruth, I'm not writing to beg for Jessica. I won't insult you like that. I'm her mother. And I need to tell you something no one else will. Jessica was hurt as a child badly. Not to excuse what she did, but to say she wasn't born cruel. I failed her. I let my husband turn her into someone hollow. Someone who learned love through power. I thought she'd heal over time. Instead, she passed the wound forward. I see now she chose you because you were kind. That's who she punishes most. You don't owe her forgiveness. But I owe you the truth. Elisa sat on the porch and read it twice. Then a third time. The wind carried away the rain, and the clouds cracked enough for sunlight to pass through. Daniel stepped out and asked, "You okay?" I looked at him. "I'm thinking," I said, "about what cycles end, and which ones were strong enough to break." He nodded slowly. "You don't have to forgive her." "I know," I said, "but maybe I'll forgive myself. For staying quiet. For letting shame bury my voice." He placed his hand on mine. And for the first time in decades, I let myself cry, not from fear, but from release. Before you scroll away, I need you to hear this, just one more time. I'm not just another old woman who lived through cruelty. I'm the woman who was dragged by her hair across a hardwood floor by her daughter-in-law, who was slapped for standing too slow, denied food for speaking too loud, locked out for asking too much. I'm the woman who was told by her own son that she was overreacting, until the bruises screamed louder than I ever could. And now, I'm the woman who survived it all. Jessica went to prison 6 weeks ago. The day she was transferred, the sun broke through the clouds so fiercely it painted the walls of the house gold. For the first time in years, I opened every window and let the air in. Daniel changed too. He didn't just apologize, he stayed. He sat beside me through silence and tears, through long talks and longer silences. He looked through childhood photos, and in each one I saw it, me, holding him, loving him. Before she came between us. One evening, while trimming the roses in the backyard, those same roses Jessica once tore up by the root, I found a photo buried under the soil. It was of her. Young, smiling, a child. And I felt nothing. No rage. No pity. Just distance. Like her cruelty was part of a storm I'd finally walked out of. I burned the photo. Not out of hatred, but as a quiet ritual. A way to say, this ends with me. I forgave my younger self for not screaming louder. I forgave the women before me who stayed in abusive homes because they were told that's what strength looked like. And I even forgave Daniel for not seeing the truth until it was nearly too late. But Jessica? No. Some silences are not meant to be filled with mercy. Some silences must remain so a woman like me can finally hear her own voice. Loud, clear, and free. So, if you're still listening, thank you. Not for me, but for every woman whose pain hides behind polite smiles, who's told she's just old and should be grateful, who's been made invisible in her own home. We see you. I see you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the courage to stand too. Even if your knees shake. Even if your voice breaks. Because survival is not the end. It's just the beginning.